The Capital One Venture X has been gassed up to a questionable point since its release in 2021, and honestly this card has garnered so much hype that you might feel dumb for not applying for it if you don't have it yet. However, have we really taken a step back to see if this card is really worth it or not? In this video, I'll be breaking down this card in a few different parts. Part 1 is going to be the pros of the Capital One Venture X, Part 2 will be the cons of the Capital One Venture X, and Part 3 is going to be my final verdict on this card as somebody that's held it for the past 6 months or so. By the end of this video, I hope to help you decide whether or not you should apply for the Venture X if you don't have it yet, or maybe whether you should keep or cancel it if you do currently hold it. That brings us into Part 1, the pros. Of course, as with any credit card, we have to first start with its welcome offer. The welcome offer on this card at the time of me recording is for 75,000 points after spending $4,000 in the first 3 months of holding it. If you were to take the points guys valuation of Capital One miles of 1.85 cents per point, this welcome bonus would be worth approximately $1,400. But that is dependent on your redemption, so don't just take that at face value. Also, if you do want to see the highest public welcome offer at the time of you watching this video, be sure to click the link down in my description, and if you apply through that link, you'll directly support me at no additional cost to you, so I thank you in advance. And also feel free to let me know how your application goes if you apply for it down below in the comments of this video, or you can DM me at Spencer Johnson Official if you want to talk to me there. I don't know if this is necessarily a pro, but still a big part of this credit card is that it only has an annual fee of $395. I say only because in comparison to the other cards in this premium travel credit card space, this is actually going to be the lowest annual fee you come across. For example, you have the Chase Sapphire Reserve with a $550 annual fee and the Amex Platinum with a $695 annual fee. So the Venture X's $395 annual fee really doesn't sound that bad in comparison. As for the earning categories on this card, it's going to give you 10x back on hotels and car rentals booked through Capital One's travel portal, 5x Capital One miles on airfare booked through Capital One's travel portal, and 2x Capital One miles on everything else. The 10 and 5x categories that the Capital One Venture X has are definitely very valuable, but do note that to use those, you have to be booking travel through Capital One's travel portal, and luckily their travel portal is one of the best in the entire game according to data points I've collected online, and also from personal experience, to be honest. However, those two categories aren't exactly special by any means because all the other premium travel credit cards have very similar categories for their travel portals. So in my opinion, yes, those are good, but they're not exactly going to be like groundbreaking for this card. However, that 2x category makes this a very good catch-all credit card and one that you can use in literally any given situation, which is unlike all the other premium travel credit cards out there. I do kind of wish that it covered a couple more everyday spending categories, like maybe just 3x back on dining, similar to how the Chase Sapphire Reserve works, but it seems that Capital One definitely followed the Amex's Platinum earning category breakdown while also giving you an extra 1x back compared to the Platinum in that everything else category. So in that case, it actually does beat out the Amex Platinum. Now, the main credit that this card comes with to help offset that $395 annual fee is going to be the annual travel credit. And just for your reference, this credit did used to be given to you as a statement credit after you made qualifying purchases through Capital One's travel portal, but they recently changed it to where it's no longer a statement credit and it's basically just a direct redeemable credit through their travel portal, which may not sound like that bad of a thing, and it really isn't, but that just means that you're no longer going to be earning points for those purchases on that $300 worth of travel through the portal. I don't know if you caught it, I said it a few times, but also I know a lot of y'all know about this already, but the one main gripe that people have about this annual travel credit is that it has to be used through Capital One's travel portal. That is different from a card like the Chase Sapphire Preferred that allows you to use that travel credit really wherever you want in that travel category, but I'm going to get into a little bit more about that later. Speaking of Capital One's travel portal though, one of the main reasons that people like it so much is because they utilize Hopper's price matching feature to basically find you the best rates out of all the other travel portals in theory. And if they don't give you the best prices directly on Capital One, if you do find a lower rate, you're able to price match it to that lower rate and they will refund you the difference. I don't personally have experience with that yet, but just know that that price matching feature is something that people have told me that they've used and they've really liked it. The last thing on this annual travel credit I want to mention is that it is given to you based on your card member year and not the calendar year. So if you're originally planning on applying for this card in December to use the annual travel credit and then hopefully get it back up again in January, that's not going to work in this case. You have to wait a full year after you initially open the card to get that travel credit again. Before we get into the rest of these benefits, let me tell you all about an app that I use to manage my Venture X as well as my other 9 credit cards that I have at this time, and that of course is going to be Max Rewards. I do want to say right up front that yes, Max Rewards is a sponsor of the channel, but I have genuinely been using their app since before they were a sponsor of the channel and before I even started making YouTube videos, so I do have some experience with this app. What Max Rewards is an app that allows you to pool all of your credit card information into one convenient place, even if all of those credit cards come from a bunch of different lenders. It's going to tell you things like your total card balance, balances, your total point balances, your bill due dates, and much more in one single interface. Honestly, the fact alone that they show you when all of your credit card bills are due is extremely helpful, because if you do have multiple credit cards and they don't have the same due date, which they likely don't, it would be nice to know when your money is going to be pulled out of your bank account, and Max Rewards will help you understand that. Another feature that I really like about Max Rewards is that they do give you a welcome bonus tracker for all the new cards you apply for, including the Venture X if you wanted to use it for this card, and that's been extremely helpful for me over the past 10 cards that I've applied for. Max Rewards also has a paid tier called Max Rewards Gold that will not only automatically activate your quarterly rotating categories for you on your cards like your Chase Freedom Flex, but they'll also automatically activate your credit card offers for you, which is really clutch. I also want to mention that Max Rewards is making some big changes to their app that I think is going to really set it apart from other apps in its space. So if you want to get on board with it and try out the free features, please be sure to download Max Rewards through my link below. And during the sign up process, if you enter the promo code Spencer, you'll get 1 free month of Max Rewards Gold that you can use down the line. Thank you to Max Rewards for sponsoring this portion of the video, but let's get back to talking about everybody's favorite credit card. Another big pro of the Venture X is that it does give you 10,000 anniversary miles every single year you just renew the annual fee on the card. And with that 1.85 cent per point valuation from the points guy, that would be worth $185. And this is honestly a really nice perk. I'm not exactly sure what prompted them to want to give this to every single person that has the card, but if you know how to use the points, you're automatically reducing your annual fee by at least $100. So while I'm definitely happy that it's on the card, I also wouldn't be super surprised if they nerf this in the future, but that could just be me making things up. The Venture X also gives you a $100 global entry or TSA pre-check credit, which I have also signed up for with my Venture X. I still need to do the interview for global entry, but I have signed up for it and the credit did work. And another nice thing about the Venture X is that it does give you access to a bunch of airport lounges. More specifically, it's going to give you unlimited access to Capital One's own lounges and lounges within their partner lounge network like Plaza Premium and Priority Pass. Do note that the Priority Pass Select membership that comes with the Venture X is not going to give you full access to the restaurants and spas, similar to how the Chase Sapphire Reserve does, but this card does give you a Priority Pass membership, and it allows you to bring in unlimited guests for free. And also a really cool thing about the lounge access is that the authorized users also get these lounge access perks, which is pretty sweet. As I mentioned, both Venture X cardholders and authorized users can bring in unlimited guests to Priority Pass lounges, but you can also bring up to 2 guests to the Plaza Premium lounges and 2 guests to the Capital One lounges. Now, speaking of those authorized users, one of the biggest thing that people love about this credit card in particular is that you can add up to 4 additional authorized users to your account completely for free. Compare that to a card like the Amex Platinum that now charges you $195 per person. That is a massive value add that the Venture X has that other cards may not. This is definitely one of those perks that I would imagine they take away or at least nerf at some point in the future on this card, but for now, this is a massive way to get value from this card. As for some rapid fire additional benefits, this card also gives you Hertz President Circle status for the primary card holders, primary car rental collision and damage insurance, Visa Infinite trip interruption and cancellation benefits, which would come with every Visa Infinite credit card in theory, no foreign transaction fees, of course, making this a great travel card, and it's a Visa, so that also really helps in the worldwide acceptance of this card. And then also one of the more underrated things, but something that I did talk about in one of my recent videos talking about how I've earned so many credit card points on my 2-year journey so far, is that you can refer 4 people to this card for 25,000 points per referral, giving you 100,000 Capital One miles if you were to max out your referral link. I realize not everybody is in a position to be able to max out their links, but for every referral to give you 25,000 points, that is a lot. And also this card does come with some unique cell phone protection, where basically instead of this card just giving you protection if your phone is damaged or stolen, they will also give you coverage for involuntary or accidental parting. So basically, if you lose your phone, you are still covered by the Venture X by those terms. Most other cards are not going to give you that generous of cell phone protection, so that is kind of an underrated perk about this card, I guess. And of course, there are more benefits that come with this card, and some of them I might have forgot, so feel free to leave those down below. But I think we covered a lot there, so let's move on to the cons of this credit card. The first, and honestly one of the biggest cons about this card, is that it's a Capital One credit card, but what I mean by that is firstly that they have, we'll call it limited transfer partners. What I mean by that is that they don't have any direct domestic airline travel partners, and that is unlike somebody like Amex or Chase, and granted, you might not always want to use your points in that fashion, but really the only way to book a domestic flight with your Capital One Venture X miles, if you don't want to use the portal but want to use their travel partners, is to learn how to use airline alliances, which can get really confusing and may not be worth all of the effort if you are somebody that's just a more casual credit card user. On top of that, they only have a couple of hotel partners, one of which being Choice and the other one being Wyndham. While both of those can be good hotel partners, one of the things that that sucks with Choice hotels in particular is that you only get a 1-to-1 transfer rate with Capital One miles. But if you look at Citi, for example, you'll get a transfer rate of 1-to-2 no matter when you do it. So you're basically getting half as much value by transferring your Capital One miles to Choice as you would by transferring your Citi points to Choice. As for the Wyndham partnership, that is also a 1-to-1 transfer rate. So in saying all that, all I'm saying is that their lineup of transfer partners is pretty good and probably underrated. But with that lack of a good hotel or domestic airline transfer partner, I would say that they are much less competitive than a lender like Chase or Amex. Another redemption option that they just do not cover very well is going to be cashback. What I mean by that is that they literally just do not have a competitive cashback rate that you can cash out your Capital One miles at, which is a big problem compared to a lender like Chase or Citi in this case. With Chase and Citi, you can cash out your points at a 1 cent per point redemption rate, which is what you would get on any cashback credit card. But with Capital One miles, you would only get a 0.5 cent per point redemption, which is not good, and honestly, I would never do that. So as you can probably tell from these first two cons, you're just lacking a lot of flexibility with Capital One's ecosystem. Another big problem that a lot of people have with this credit card, like I said before, is that it's a Capital One credit card, which means in this case that it's actually really hard to get approved for if you are somebody with good credit history. I know that sounds extremely counterintuitive, but just hear me out. Most Capital One cards I feel like we think of as being pretty easy to get approved for, at least some of their lower tier cards. But the way that the Venture X works is that Capital One seems to be very happy to deny people with like perfect credit scores and perfect credit history in favor of somebody with poor credit history. And the only explanation I personally have come up with for this is that Capital One does have somewhat of a predatory system in where they want to bring on more risky customers that might default on their payments and pay them for interest and all that stuff. Of course, that's not necessarily substantiated. That is kind of my opinion, but you would think that a premium travel credit card would approve people with basically premium credit scores, and that just doesn't seem to be the case for this card. On top of that, Capital One will hard pull all 3 bureaus when you apply for this credit card, which just makes that application process that much more annoying. It also means that you definitely need to be using their pre-approval tool before applying for this card, and I talked a lot more about that in my personal Watch Me Apply for the Venture X, so I'd recommend that you check that one out before applying for the card. For these next 2 bullet points, I want to go ahead and compare this card to both Chase's credit cards and Amex's credit cards so you can kind of see the differences between them. And let's go ahead and start with the comparison to Chase credit cards. One of the biggest ones in my opinion is going to be what I said earlier, in that you cannot redeem the miles on your Capital One Venture X at a respectable rate for cashback. On top of that, Chase arguably has much better transfer partners than Capital One does, mainly including Hyatt, which is one that I've gotten a ton of value from with my Chase points. And also, I personally transfer my points out to Southwest a lot for short domestic trips, and that is a domestic airline, of course, of which Capital One has none of. Now, this next one is particularly important to me, and that is that Capital One locks you into their travel portal to get positive value from the card because you need to use that annual travel credit. And for one, like we talked about earlier, you're no longer able to get a statement credit back for that credit, and instead you just have to redeem it through their travel portal, meaning that you no longer get those 1,500 to 3,000 points you would have gotten before they made that change. But this is also annoying compared to the Chase Sapphire Reserve, because with the Sapphire Reserve, you can get that travel credit back on literally like any travel purchases, and it does not have to be within Chase's portal, which I think is a big key that helps separate the Chase Sapphire Reserve from the Venture X in that annual travel credit. But on top of that, my second big issue with the travel portal and the Venture X is that the Venture X gives you no kind of boost in their travel portal whatsoever. On even just the Chase Sapphire Preferred on the Chase side with a $95 annual fee, you get a 25% boost on your points through Chase's travel portal when you use your Chase Sapphire Preferred to make that booking. And with the Chase Sapphire Reserve, you get a 50% boost on your points. With the Capital One Venture X, obviously you get nothing. This may not sound like a big deal to you, and I've heard people try to justify this credit by saying that, well, the Venture X gives you 2x back on everything, so you should make up your points there. But in reality, those boosts through the Chase portal are going to give you so much more value than 2x back ever would. Of course, depending on your travel habits as well as your spending habits, but I would argue that for most people who use a travel portal even somewhat frequently, you'd rather have that boost than you would that 2x back. But now let's go ahead and compare the Venture X to Amex's credit cards. One of the main differences between the two ecosystems in general is that Amex does have far better customer service, at least according to most people. I actually had a really good experience with a Capital One customer service client, at least on the Capital One travel side of things. So there's absolutely no complaints on my end yet, but for the most part, people know that Amex has the best customer service. Another thing in favor here of Amex over Capital One, which is similar to Chase, is that Amex does generally have better travel partners. On top of that, the Amex Platinum is going to give you the most extensive lounge access out of any single credit card. So technically it beats both the Chase Sapphire Reserve and the Capital One Venture X in that category. And also the Amex Platinum gives you access to Amex's Centurion lounges, which are like their own thing that you can only really get with the Platinum card, at least for the most part. And while the Venture X does give you access to Capital One's lounges, lounges, their lounge network is not very extensive yet. I would love to see them add more in the future, but until they do that, I would say that their lounge access, while it is really nice, the lounges they do have, there's just not many of them, so you're probably not going to get to use one much at all, if ever. With all of that comparison aside, I just want to say that there are a lot of cons to the Capital One Venture X that we just don't really talk about that much. And while this is a really amazing card and this shouldn't necessarily sway you from getting it, I just think you need to know all the facts about it before you just apply for it because everybody says it's great. It is objectively a great card, but is it great for you? That's what you need to find out by the end of this video. And with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into part 3, which is going to be my final verdict on this card. I first off want to start by saying that I don't necessarily think you can do a direct comparison from the Venture X to the Amex Platinum and the Chase Sapphire Reserve, mainly because it's kind of standing in a category of its own. Like I said before, it has a lower annual fee than both of those cards, but it also has a much higher annual fee than those mid-tier travel credit cards that are in like the $95 range. Of course, there are times that we should be comparing this card to those because it still has a very high annual fee and gives you thousands of dollars worth of value back if you know how to use it correctly, just like all of the other premium travel credit cards, but it does kind of stand in a niche of its own. I do 100% believe that this card gives you those premium travel benefits that a lot of people want from those higher annual fee cards at a lower annual fee, which I think is awesome. And that is why I would say that the Capital One Venture X is the best beginner luxury travel credit card on the market, because if you just want to dip your feet in the luxury travel credit card game and you don't want to go straight for the Amex Platinum card, for example, you can test out a lot of the same features that the Platinum card has, but on a lower annual fee card that is much easy to recoup a lot of value from if you don't know exactly what you're doing. Basically, I think that the Capital One Venture X does have its weaknesses like we just talked about, but it is probably one of the most balanced options out there in that premium travel credit card space. A very important thing though to keep in mind with this card is that at the moment, Capital One has started to make negative changes to this card to basically not let you recoup quite as much value from this card as you could in the past. For example, they took away that restaurant and spa access for your Priority Pass Select membership, and they also changed that annual travel credit to make it a little less favorable. So if you're watching this like a year later from the time I posted it, I would be sure to check up on how this card is doing, because you never know if they've nerfed it to the ground at this point. In the end, my final verdict on this card is to get it while it's hot if this card does make sense for you, but do expect for it to cool off at some point. And if you do end up wanting to apply for it after watching this video, once again, it would really mean a ton to me if you could use the links down in the description to do so, because that really helps me continue to put out this free content to y'all, which I love to do. And if you want to analyze all of your premium travel credit card options before deciding on just one after watching this video, go ahead and watch this one next. I am currently in Dallas, Texas, about to attend Vid Summit this week, and it's basically just a big YouTube conference where I get to hear from some of the biggest creators in the entire YouTube space, which I'm really excited about. But of course, Odin can't be here with me for that. And either way, both of us want to say thank you so much for watching as always. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.